Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We are continuing with our fiscal policy chapter. Again, the most important chapter which you are going to study along with monetary policy. Fiscal policy is of paramount importance. It is very important. We know what are the concepts of fiscal policy, why fiscal policy is very important, and why do economists spend their lives deciding what policy should follow and what policy action should be taken, right? We'll revise a few things. Will you please help me by understanding what do you mean by primary deficit? What do we mean by primary deficit? Will you please help me? Can you revise it with me? What is meant by primary deficit? Does anyone have any idea? Primary deficit is nothing but fiscal deficit minus what? Fiscal deficit minus grants for creation of capital assets. Yes or no? No. Primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest on loans taken, interest on previous loans taken. New government says that why should we include it in our calculation? That was the mistake which was made by previous government. Previous government followed new policies, different kind of policies, and hence we should not calculate it. That is primary deficit. Secondly, what do I mean by fiscal deficit? Any idea what do I mean by fiscal deficit? What is fiscal deficit? Think and tell me, what is fiscal deficit? Anyone? What is fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is what I take my total expenditure. This is my total expenditure which I have to spend, including capital, including revenue, right? Then what do? I reduce my revenue receipts from that, and I also reduce my non-debt creating capital receipts. Why don't I reduce debt creating capital receipts? Because that is what we are trying to find here. That is what we are trying to find. Fiscal deficit is nothing but debt, nothing but borrowings. So if you are going to find debt creating capital receipts, you cannot include it in the equation. So fiscal deficit is nothing but total expenditure minus revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. The resultant amount which you get, the resultant figure which you get is known as fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit and all these deficits are always expressed as a percentage of GDP, and they signify how much borrowing. Fiscal deficit signifies how much borrowing is to be done by the government in the particular year. The budget is made for how much borrowing is done and is to be done, and accordingly expenditure and revenue targets are set. Yes or no? Very simple. What is effective revenue deficit? What is effective revenue deficit? What is effective revenue deficit? It is nothing but revenue deficit minus grants for creation of capital assets. Yes or no? Why do we calculate effective revenue deficit? We calculate it because we want to know what actually my revenue expenditures revenue receipts are going into revenue expenses. When I reduce grants for creation of capital assets, that is revenue receipt going for creation of capital assets. So that is not a part of my revenue deficit, because I told you we always look at the nature of transactions. We don't look at the nomenclature always. So grants by nomenclature itself are revenue in nature, but if they are going for creation of capital assets, then they become capital, and we reduce them from the revenue deficit and we get effective revenue deficit. What was the fourth deficit which we learned? Revenue deficit. What do we mean by revenue deficit? Revenue deficit is nothing but excess of revenue expenditure over revenue receipts, which is nothing but revenue expenses minus revenue receipts is your revenue deficit. Done. We also learned one more kind of deficit, or we also learned something called as a monetized deficit. Can you remember what was monetized deficit? Can you remember what is monetized deficit? I told you what is monetized deficit. Can you help me revise, or can you help me recollect what is monetized deficit? I don't know what is monetized deficit. Try to recollect without looking. Try to recollect what was monetized. Try to break the words down into normal English words and try to think, what do you mean by monetized deficit? Monetized. Monetization has happened of some deficit. So which means who does monetization? Normally RBI does monetization, right? So that part of deficit which is financed by RBI, either by printing currency notes or by taking up treasury bills ad hoc, that is known as monetized deficit. Yes or no? Monetized deficits can be done via two ways. One is by printing currency by RBI, and one is by buying ad hoc treasury bills. Remember yesterday we discussed about ad hoc treasury bills by RBI, and that was monetized deficit, which means nothing but government calling up RBI and saying, this year my fiscal deficit is 10%, I want you to print the currency notes. This year my fiscal deficit is 10%, I want you to purchase the bills. And yesterday we also discussed about treasury bills. What do we mean by treasury bills? What are bonds? Treasury bills are in the nature of bonds only. What are they actually? They are nothing but they are a piece of paper which signifies that I have given you so much of money, and I will pay you this much interest. I will repay in these many terms, or this is the duration and the maturity of 10, 15, 20 years, whatever would be written on it. Yes or no? This was So is this active? Is monetization of deficit active currently? Yes or no? Is monetization of deficit currently active? What do you think? Is monetization of deficit currently active? Please try to recollect, and please, if you are not able to recollect, then you have to revise, because just looking at the lectures and writing notes and it is not enough. You have to revise it simultaneously. You have to revise it in real time. Okay? This was discontinued in 2006 and this was discontinued in 1997. So that is why monetization of deficit currently does not happen. Yes or no? Monetization of deficit does not happen currently. It used to happen up to certain extent till 1997 and up to certain extent till 2006, but now it does not happen. So monetization of deficit directly by RBI by printing currency notes or by purchase of ad hoc treasury bills does not happen. But deficit, when government runs a deficit, government can borrow from RBI, government can issue treasury bills to RBI, RBI buys treasury bills. The only difference is they are not ad hoc in nature now. They are not ad hoc in nature. RBI can say no, we will not buy. So what happens actually is RBI and government have a meeting before budget is presented. RBI asks government, how much deficit are you planning to present in your budget? So government says, as per our calculations, it is coming to 6.8%. Okay? RBI says we will be able to buy treasury bills up to 3% of that. Rest you have to look elsewhere. Government says fine, no problem. So out of that 6.8%, 3% treasury bills, 3% worth of treasury bills are purchased by RBI, and rest of them government goes to other parties. Okay? Then we saw another concept, something called as deficit financing. What is deficit financing? Try to think, what is deficit financing? What do you think is deficit financing? Try to recollect what is deficit financing. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes. You don't have to see your notes. You have to explain it to yourself. What is deficit financing? Try to recollect. Put stress on your memory. See, in prelims and even in mains, extreme stress on your memory would be there automatically because you have limited time. Here, so I'm giving you 1 or 2 minutes for one concept. In exam, you will not have that much of time. Try to break it down, deficit financing. Try to break it down in this manner. Yesterday we had discussed deficit financing in sufficient detail. Just try to recollect what is deficit financing. Just try to think what is it, what is deficit financing and how is it different from monetized deficit. Yesterday I told you how is it different from monetized deficit. What is deficit financing? We have discussed all of these. Try to think what can happen or what would be the case. So this lecture would be a short lecture. The next lecture would be a big lecture because there are some other lectures scheduled to be recorded. So next lecture we will have a big lecture. But what is deficit financing? Deficit financing is use of deficit for financing your expenses. See, I told you that we can reduce our fiscal deficit today also. We can cut down the expenditure on defense. We can cut down the expenditure on subsidies. We can cut down capital expenses or expenditure on capital goods. We can cut down our expenditure on bridges, dams, ports, railways, etc. And we can make our fiscal deficit very minuscule or even zero, or even we can go in fiscal surplus. But is that a way to development? No, it is not a way to development because we have to run deficits. We are a country of so many number of people. So many number of people have different needs. So many number of people have different social conditions and we have to help them. We are a mixed economy. There are social obligations. Now, notice the use of words. We have to provide public goods to the people also. Remember, public goods, private goods. Public goods are those which are given by the government. Private goods are those which are given by private people. We have done this in earlier lectures. Public goods ka characteristics are two. One, they are non-excludable, and one, they are non-rivalrous. I hope you remember all of this. If you are not remembering this, then you have to revise because we have done this in our earlier lectures. I think 3 lectures before we have done this. And public goods are goods which are given or which are provided by the public authorities, which is government of all 3 tiers. They are non-excludable, which means that usage, or you cannot restrict the usage of anyone, and they are non-rivalrous, which means what? One person's use does not diminish the use by other persons. So to provide public goods, you have to run a deficit. You don't have enough sources of money, and we are not yet going into the revenue aspect of it. I told you yesterday that revenue is increasing slowly. How to increase it at a faster rate, we are going to see today. Okay? So deficit financing, so does India follow deficit financing? Yes, India does follow deficit financing because we run deficits to finance our expenditures. We run deficits deliberately to finance our expenditure. Yes or no? Monetized deficit is that part of fiscal deficit which is monetized by RBI, which is directly the currency is printed by RBI, or directly the T-bills are ad hoc are subscribed or purchased in an ad hoc manner by RBI, which is now discontinued. But deficit financing was there, is there, and will be there for the economy, because our expenditure will always outstrip our revenues and our receipts, and we have to run deficit financing compulsorily, right? Then came the question, then we also did some calculations on the live budget figures, and you were able to do it very well. We also saw two very, very important terms. One is fiscal stimulus and second is fiscal consolidation. Yes, fiscal stimulus and fiscal consolidation are very, very, very important terms. They are most important terms. What do we mean by fiscal stimulus? What do we mean by fiscal stimulus? Fiscal stimulus is just giving a boost or stimulating the economy. What do you mean by stimulating or giving a boost to the economy? Which means that you enhance the purchasing power of the people. Always remember, purchasing power or spending is the fuel of the economy. So you are enhancing the fuel availability in the economy, which means what would you do to the tax? You know only this thing. What would you do to taxes? What would you do in fiscal stimulus? Would you reduce taxes or would you increase taxes? You would reduce taxes. Okay, you are providing a stimulation to the economy, will reduce taxes, which will result in enhanced purchasing power in the hands of the people, and hence this policy is also known as an expansionary fiscal policy. Expansionary fiscal policy, बराबर है? And this is opposite to that. Fiscal consolidation is a contractionary fiscal policy. You contract the economy. Why is it called as consolidation? Why is it called as stimulus? In consolidation, you reduce the gap between your expenses and revenue. I told you increasing revenue is not that feasible very quickly, but expenditure you can reduce by just ignoring the important expenditure and rationalizing all the kinds of expenditures you can reduce. So one is, you can either follow this, you can either follow this. It depends on the time and requirements. After global recession in 2008, the requirement was to go full on towards fiscal stimulus. So we went full on towards fiscal stimulus. After pandemic, we had to give social security, we had to give wages, we had to give temporary jobs to people, we had to give housing to people, we had to give temporary transport to people so that they can return to their villages. Train travel was free in the first phase for a lot of migrants. Someone who was working in Maharashtra from UP, if they wanted to go back home because of job loss and because of everything, they were given free train tickets also. So this is all part of fiscal stimulus, because that expenditure is not resulting in revenue. Always keep in mind, in economics, whatever you are spending, it should result in some benefit to you. But these kinds of expenditure do not provide economic benefit. Socially, obviously, they provide a lot of benefit. Economically, they don't provide any benefit. That is why they are expansionary. And this would result in, what would happen to fiscal deficit? Would it increase or would it reduce? Fiscal deficit would increase here and fiscal deficit would reduce here. Okay? Is this clear? This was what we revised, right? Then we also saw that what does the government do when it has a fiscal deficit? What does it do? Can it just keep fiscal deficit figures as it is? It has to borrow. It has to fill in the gap. This is a gap here. You have to borrow it, or you have to fill in the gap. What does it do? Either it can monetize the deficit or it can borrow. Earlier it used to monetize the deficit. Now it cannot monetize the deficit. So now the only option remaining with the government is to borrow. Either it can borrow from outside India, yes or no? Either it can borrow from within India. From within India, what is the situation? Either it can borrow from banks, including RBI, or it can borrow from individual investors. Okay? It can borrow from individual investors. Now what do you think? What do you think? Outside, when it goes to borrow, outside when the government goes to borrow, will the borrowing be in rupees or will the borrowing be in foreign currency? What do you think? Outside, when it goes to borrow, will the borrowing be in rupees or will the borrowing be in foreign currency? What do you think? The borrowing will be in foreign currency. So let's say it is in dollars, because nobody is going to give us rupees in terms of loans. In India, obviously, it will be rupees. Okay, right? Then we saw that banks have a very limited amount of money. Banks have a limited pool of money. So when when government goes to the bank, and if the government is big fat and government requires a lot of money, then what happens? Lesser amount of money is remaining with the banks, and then banks, obviously they are also doing a business of supplying money, and they are also doing the business of in fact selling and purchasing money. So they will sell the remaining money at a higher cost. And what is the cost of funds provided by the bank? Interest. Interest is the cost of funds provided by the bank. Yes or no? Do you agree with this? Interest is the cost of funds. So bank would reduce interest or bank would increase interest. When the government has a lot of borrowings, when the government has a lot of fiscal deficit, and when the government approaches the banks, sir, I need money from you, I want to fill my gap, I want to conduct my expenditures, then what would the bank do? Bank would give it money, but the remaining money, if it is very less, then banks would obviously increase interest. Banks would make the money costlier, and this would result in what? This would result in what? Did we do something called as crowding out yesterday? This would result in crowding out. Yes, this would result in crowding out of the private investment, because they will not be able to get money. If they are not able to get money, always remember C plus I suffers, because they are not going to use it. So imagine on one side government is running policies which enhance, provides an impetus to the suppliers to produce more goods. But on the other side, government is only borrowing so much that funds are not available. So that supplier would say, I want to buy a new machine, but I am not able to get funds at a lower cost. Okay, this is crowding out. We also saw an opposite phenomena called as crowding in. We saw this. We saw crowding in also. What do we mean by crowding in? We mean that the positive actions taken by the government which have positive multiplier actions. Construction of a bridge will provide employment to thousands of people. All of that comes under crowding in. Barabar hai? Then we saw, very important, we saw that fiscal deficit, unlimited fiscal deficit is not good. Why? Because it impairs the ability of future generation. Why? Because today if government takes a loan of 2 lakh crore rupees, okay, that loan has to be repaid after 10 years. After 10 years, when government has to repay that loan, from where it will get the money? Either it can borrow further or it can raise taxes. Okay, revenue receipts would increase or capital receipts would increase. Let us say it goes to another bank after 10 years. Sir, I have to repay this loan of some other bank. The other bank says, sorry sir, you already have a lot of loan. So government says, now only one option is remaining, raise the revenue receipts. Okay? You can also try to raise your disinvestment receipts, non-debt creating capital receipts, any way through which you are able to repay this. Okay? Because this repayment becomes your capital expenditure now. Remember, repayment of loan taken becomes your capital expenditure. To finance this, either you can borrow, or to finance this, either you can increase your revenue receipts, or either you can, borrowing is nothing but your capital receipts, debt creating capital receipts. Either you can increase revenue receipts or you can increase your non-debt creating capital receipts. Yes or no? These are the only ways to raise money. This is out because banks said that you already have a loan. We are not going to give you loan because you are already not worthy of repayment or not worthy of taking loan from us because you already have a loan. So either you can do this or you can do this. This also has some limits because if the PSU is profit making, always remember, if the PSU is profit making, government will never sell its shares. Right? When you are earning a lot in your career, you will never quit your job. When you are not earning, when you are bored, then you quit your job and you try something new. So similarly, if let's say ONGC is giving a lot of profits for the government, then government will not sell ONGC shares. So government will not disinvest. Government will not sell its shares. This is disinvestment, right? One of the biggest examples of non-debt creating capital receipts is disinvestment. What will government do? Government will focus on this. What is the major source of revenue receipts? Taxes. Okay? What will government do? Government will increase taxes. Yes or no? And when the government increases taxes, the people who have just started earning 10 years down the line, who have just passed college 18 years, 20 years, 21, 22 years, who have just got their first salary and they read newspaper, the government has increased taxes, they will abuse the government. Big guy hai government. Right? They will say that this government is not working very well, this government keeps on increasing taxes. Okay? Who is suffering? People who are earning after 10 years. Who enjoyed? People who were earning before 10 years, because this loan was taken by the government to spend on people only. Okay? To conduct capital expenditure, to give subsidies. So let's say your father is a farmer. 10 years ago he received lot of subsidy from the government. He was praising the government. The government is so good, it is giving me so much of subsidy. How the government has financed that subsidy? Through your capital receipts. Because fiscal deficit, government ran fiscal deficit, it borrowed money from banks or RBI and it gave subsidy to farmers. Now you don't want to go in farming, you do a normal job, you go to the city, you do a job 10 years down the line, when you don't know what is happening behind the curtain at the government office, but at the government office 10 years down the line, sir, that loan we had taken to provide subsidy to farmers, we have to repay. Sir, but we don't have money to repay. Either you can approach banks again, bank is saying no, then you have to disinvest, but we have a lot of profit making these things, so now we should not disinvest. And secondly, revenue receipts. So we say, okay, fine, we'll increase little bit of taxes so that we are able to repay this. So when you increase taxes, what happens? When you increase taxes, what happens is that these people who have just started earning or who have just got a promotion, they then abuse the government. Do you realize how? Now notice the language of the question which we saw. Okay? Do you realize how unsustainable financial liabilities are given to the future? Okay? I'll just show you the question also. It is very important we revise it. We relate it to the UPSC questions altogether. I remember it was in 2014. Normally, countries shift while we flaunt, villages, right to fair compensation, capitalism, PPP. See this question. Explain how PPP arrangements in long gestation infrastructure, which means long duration, can transfer unsustainable liabilities to the future. What arrangements need to be put in place to ensure that successive generations' capacities are not compromised? This is exactly what we are talking about when governments incur a lot of debt. So in this case, they are talking about PPP. But in our example, we said that government borrowed a lot, but then future generations' capacities are compromised. Because when they pay higher taxes, less money is left with them for their own use, for their own purchases. They want to buy a laptop, they want to buy a vehicle, they are not able to buy because more and more money goes in taxes, right? So who enjoyed? Your father enjoyed subsidies. Who is suffering? You are suffering. Same in this PPP case only, we will see in PPP also, when the government is constructing a new bridge, which will take 20 years, government has taken a lot of debt today to construct that bridge. Today that bridge is constructed, today government is running ads in newspapers, we are constructing bridge, we are constructing highways, we are connecting this city to this city, all of that government is doing. What happens after that? After 20 years, this bridge will start giving you money. Yes, but the bank is not going to wait for 20 years. Bank will say, sir, 5 years ke baad, I want my repayment, I want my EMI to start. What will happen? Government will start raising taxes and then future generations' capacity would be compromised, and that is exactly what is asked here. Ki transfer unsustainable liabilities to the future. What arrangements need to be put in place to ensure that successive generations' capacities are not compromised? To know the demand of this question is very difficult in the exam, because in the exam you will not be able to understand what they are asking here unless you have a conceptual understanding of economics. If you have a conceptual understanding, then you will be able to do it, but otherwise you won't. Okay? Do you think the answer to that question is in any books? Do you really think? You will not find the answer to that question in books. These are all questions, bear in mind, these are all questions based on newspaper editorials, newspaper articles which run from time to time, and hence again every lecture I tell this, that it is imperative that you read newspapers every single day. Don't read 2 papers, read 1 paper, but read newspapers every single day. Okay? Okay? Then what did we see yesterday? Did we see something called so now fiscal deficit, can it be unlimited? No, it cannot be unlimited. Do we have some limits on fiscal deficit in India? Yes. What was the name of the act? We have something called as the Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, which here, see, I am very particular with specifics. When we do economic survey and budget sessions in Feb 22, March 22, I will make sure that every figure is by-hearted in your mind, every relevant figure, and I will also ask these figures. So this simple thing should be known to you. Okay, FRRBM Act. What does this act say? Just try to recollect what does this act say, or what is the full form of this act. Pehle to what is the full form of this act and what does this act say? See, full forms also fetch you high marks in your mains. If it is a 15 marker or a 20 marker question, you have to use the full form. So that, and especially for acts like which have complicated names. Okay? There is an act called as SARFAES Act, SARFAES Act. We'll speak about it later, about that act. The full form of that act is so many words, SARFAESI. So your 15 marker mein se one paragraph is only the name of that act. Securitization and Reconstruction of Financial Assets and Enforcement of Security Interest Act, SARFAESI Act. Okay, we'll see that. FRRBM Act, what do you think are the provisions of FRRBM Act? Just try to recollect the provisions. We are only revising it because it is very important to do this. Try to recollect it. Fiscal responsibility and budgetary management. Yes or no? This is the full form of the act. Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act 2003. The aim of the act was to ensure fiscal transparency and financial discipline. Okay? The aim of the act was to ensure fiscal transparency and financial discipline in the borrowing or in the budgetary process of the government. Yes or no? Right? So what was the main provision here? We limited the fiscal deficit. That was the main provision here. What did we do? We limited the fiscal deficit here, first of all. And when we limited the fiscal deficit, what was the target, latest target which was set before pandemic? What was the latest target? Do you remember? 3% of fiscal deficit. Always remember that limits are being set on fiscal deficit. Do not think that limits are set on other deficits. Earlier, yes, earlier definitely limits were set. Right? Earlier definitely limits were set, but now limits are not set. Now you can say that only fiscal deficit pe limit hai, but do you think that other things are not calculated, or do you think that other things are not targeted? No, it is very wrong to assume that other things are not targeted. We also calculate other things. We also calculate a lot of things. What were the 4 things which we calculate? Very important. First thing is obviously fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP, goes without saying. Second thing is revenue deficit as a percentage of GDP. Now tell me what is the third thing. Third thing is tax revenue as a percentage of GDP. Total tax revenue, direct, indirect. And then what is the fourth thing? The fourth thing that we calculate is the total outstanding liabilities, which means your total debt, in short, as a percentage of GDP. We check all these things, but we target or we limit only fiscal deficit. The limit was set at 3% of GDP by the year, to be achieved by the year 31st March 2020. And then did we have some relaxation in that target? Yes, we have some relaxation of 0.5%, which is known as dash, which is known as escape clause. Okay, that escape clause you can trigger by using 4 conditions. What are those 4 conditions for triggering escape clause? 1, collapse of agriculture. Okay, it should be a collapse. Second, natural calamity or national security. Third, long-ranging structural reforms or overhauling of the economy. And fourth, decline in real output or decline in real GDP. You can say output is GDP, GDP by output method. Decline in real output by more than 3% below the previous average of previous 4 quarters. Yes or no? These were the 4 situations where your relaxation you can take, and we took that relaxation in 31st March 2020 wala year, 1920 we took that, and uske baad FRBM had to be amended. Why? Because simple reason, 3.5% of fiscal deficit is simply not enough to finance the expenditures which were required to be made due to pandemic, right? So we went till 9.5% as per budget. So as per budget we saw 9.5%, right? Actually it is 9.3%. That the revised figures are 9.3%, and next year you will get the actual figures. Revised figures have already come in. They came in last week only. It is 9.3%, lesser than what we had budgeted, but marginally lesser. Okay, this was all about FRBM Act. Now we move ahead after FRBM Act, and I told you that FRBM Act has 4 statements which are to be presented. Yes or no? Do we remember we also opened up a few statements and we saw along with the budget there were 4 statements which were to be presented: macroeconomic framework statement, medium term fiscal policy statement, fiscal policy strategy statement, medium term expenditure framework statement. Yes or no? These are the 4 things which we need to present, and we also saw that they are presented. So if you ask, sir, we did not find medium term expenditure framework statement, that is because government government gives it some other name, expenditure budget or output framework and all of these things. It keeps on changing. So, but these 4 statements are mandated by FRBM and they have to be presented alongside the annual financial statement. Remember, the budget word is not used in the constitution. The word is annual financial statement. It is article number 112. Okay? And in budget also, constitution also says that expenditure has to be classified between your revenue and others. Capital word is not mentioned here. And we move ahead. Okay? Now the question comes, what is debt? I told you that debt is nothing but a pool of total government borrowings. Okay? Whatever government has borrowed, which are still going on. So you had taken a car loan 2 years ago, you had taken a home loan 1 year ago, and now you want to take a personal loan. So all of that together will be your debt. But this year only you are taking personal loan. So that personal loan will be your fiscal deficit for the current year, because FD is always for the current year. Okay? Agreed? This is fine. Everything is fine. Now, FRRBM Act started in 2003 and it was revised or amended in 2012, and in 2016, a new committee was set up in 2016. A new committee was set up, very important, to review the FRRBM, because you have to keep periodically revising it. So a new committee was set up, very important. The name of the committee is N.K. Singh Review Committee. This person, N.K. Singh, is almost on all the committees when it comes to finance and economics. Okay? N.K. Singh is also the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission. So N.K. Singh Review Committee hai. So we have N.K. Singh Review Committee. N.K. Singh Review Committee is N.K. Singh Review Committee. They suggested some reforms. They suggested that FRRBM has to be changed, and I'll tell you the most important change suggested by N.K. Singh Committee. I will tell you what was it. It said that who decides fiscal deficit? Who fixes fiscal deficit? Government. Okay, government discusses fiscal deficit along with consultation with RBI. Obviously, they do not do it on their own. And who imposes a limit on the fiscal deficit? Legislature, because it is an act now. Okay? N.K. Singh Review Committee said, very important, first point, very important. N.K. Singh Review Committee said that please have, first look at this and then we can write it. Please have an independent fiscal council. Now this, when you read about N.K. Singh Review Committee recommendations, this recommendation is amongst the last which they write, but this is the most important. Independent Fiscal Council. What do we mean by this? This should be independent from the government. It should be a fiscal council. So that council or that group of people will only study the mechanics of fiscal deficit or mechanics of government borrowings and budgeting. Okay? Independent Fiscal Council. It will have members from government, it will have members from RBI, it will have academicians also who are experts in economics, but they will be independent and they will recommend to the government that, sir, 9.5% or 6.8% is not right, you should increase it or you should decrease it. It should be an independent fiscal council. Okay? Second very important recommendation is that I told you in the last slide what is debt. Okay, what is debt? Debt is the total loans or borrowings which are taken by the government. Now debt can be taken, whatever discussion we are doing about deficits and all, the same thing applies for state governments also. Okay, so when we say GDP, we call GDP of India. When we talk about states, it is called GSDP, Gross State Domestic Product. It is GDP of the state. Okay, similarly, if I talk about fiscal deficit, we talk about central government. If I talk about state government, I'll talk about fiscal deficit. It's the same thing, same concept. So they said total debt, total liabilities. Remember the fourth indicator of FRBM should be brought down to 60% of GDP. Total debt should be brought down to 60% of GDP. Now, what about total debt? This is total government debt, total, which means it includes central government plus state government. State government also borrows, central government also borrows. State government also has the option of going outside and borrowing. Central government also has the option of going outside and borrowing. State government can also go to bank and borrow in India. Central government also has the option of going to a bank in India and borrow. Okay? So N.K. Singh Review Committee said that 60% of GDP is the total debt. This is the target. This is the limit. Okay? Isse kam karo. Total government debt should be less than 60% of GDP, and then we divide that into two parts. First part is central government debt should be less than equal to 40% of it, and state government debt should be less than equal to 20% of it. Do you understand this? Very small detail, it will have 3 members, chairperson plus 2 other members. Okay, small detail. But do you understand this? That whatever is the total borrowings currently of the state government should be reduced to 20%, maximum 20% of state, and central government का 40% होना चाहिए. So total if you take GDP of center plus states का 60% should be overall, and this should be the breakup. So if it is more than 20, reduce it to 20, or more than 40, reduce it to 40. If it is less than 40, then very good. You are doing a very good job. Which means how to reduce that now? Let's say this is 44% today, suppose. How to reduce it then? क्या करें, कैसे करें? How to do it? Redeem it. See, this is debt, this is the loan taken. So if I tell you that you can have only 10 lakh of loan on you, and if you have taken 12 lakh of loan, how do you do it? You repay the loan. Existing loan you have to repay. Or 12 lakh में से 2 lakh loans you have to repay. So how can this be done by repayment? See, this is very basic. I don't need to explain this to you. How do you reduce your loan, or how do you reduce your debt? By repaying the loan. Obviously, when you took a loan, it was added to your debt. Now when you are repaying the loan, it will be reduced from your debt. So this target was given to be achieved by 2023. This target was given to be achieved by 2023. Okay. Third important recommendation by NK Review Committee was to reduce fiscal deficit to less than 3% by 31st March 20. Reduce fiscal deficit to less than 3% by 31st March 20, which was the same as FRRBM. Okay? And after that they said that slowly reduce this fiscal deficit also. Now what do you think? Is it feasible to follow this? No, it is not. Why? Because of pandemic. Okay? Remember, this committee was set up in 2016 and gave its recommendations in 2018. So nobody had any idea about pandemic. Okay? Do you think this is possible? I don't think even this is possible, because to finance fiscal deficit of 9.5%, do you think government would have stayed even near 40% levels or something? No, government did not stay. This is still possible, and trust me, this was suggested by not only NK Singh Review Committee, but by Dr. Raghuram Rajan Committee, B.N. Sri Krishna Committee. We will talk about that in your monetary policy chapter. So then I will tell you, remember we had discussed in NK Singh Review Committee, Independent Fiscal Council. You have to remember all of those things. I will give you total. So before pandemic, this 60% जो total था ना, this 60%, this was before pandemic. The actual figures were around 72% before pandemic. Do you get it? Before pandemic, this was 72%, and इसका breakup was somewhere around some 50 odd percentage was, some 50% approximately was central government, and state government was 25 around something approx. State government. These were the actual figures before the pandemic. And then so what was the direction state governments had to take? State governments had to reduce from 25 to 20%, and central government had to reduce from 50 to 40%. As per the recommendations by 2023, you had to do this. Then pandemic happened. Then what happened in pandemic? We borrowed a lot. We mean central government, state government. We borrowed a lot. Why did we borrow? Because we had to spend a lot. Our fiscal deficit also increased. We saw by the chart 9.5%. So now this 72%, now this has gone up to 95% total. It has gone up to 95%. So achieving this is a very distant possibility. Achieving this target 90 से 60 नहीं हो पाएगा. It cannot be, because we are still preparing for third wave. We are still preparing, giving vaccines for free, healthcare for free. So we have to borrow this. Yes, we will be able to reduce it little bit, bit by bit. But no, we cannot do. We cannot reduce this to 60% by 2023. So it is very difficult, because it is just 2 years down the line. And when NK Singh committee gave this recommendation, they had given this for how many years? They had given this for 50 years. 5 years. है ना, 18 में आया था, 17, 18 में, till 2023 you had to give, but now it seems impossible, right? So this will be, and of course this was a committee recommendation, this was not something which was to be sacrosanct. And always remember, one more important thing I would like to add here is ki less than 3% by 31st March 2020 and reduce it further every year. So 2.8, 2.7, 2.5, reduce it further. But do you think it is possible now? It is not possible because of pandemic. We have taken huge debt and we have increased our fiscal deficit exponentially. समझा? Do you get it? Simple enough, right? Encasing review committee, very, very, very important. Encasing review committee said, so I'll give you a context behind this. See, the whole point of FRBM is what? To control fiscal deficit. That is the whole point of FRBM. Okay? To control fiscal deficit, right? Is it not the whole point of FRBM to limit 3%? Encasing review committee said, ki sir, fiscal deficit is good, but see what we are recommending. Fiscal deficit is good, but try to reduce debt also. See, one is you borrow less next year. Second is existing borrowing also you start to repay. Are you understanding? So when you start to repay existing borrowing, you are ensuring that future generations' capacity is not compromised. Okay? This is intergeneration parity. This is known as intergenerational parity. That you have to level up, level both these things, current generation and future generation. In environment, we call it sustainability. Yes or no? What is the meaning of sustainable development? So that future generations' capacity is not compromised. If you use all the coal resources today, what will they use tomorrow? Simple thing. If you will use all the money today, what will they use tomorrow? Okay? So encasing review committee said ki sir, to government, it said ki sir, government, this is good. Fiscal deficit you have to reduce. FRBM says perfectly, you have to reduce this further, but also reduce your current pool also. Okay? So you are limiting the number of buckets you are putting in the swimming pool, that is okay, but swimming pool is now dangerously deep. You start removing the water from the pool also. Okay? And that is why this target was given. So this committee along with focus on fiscal deficit also added a focus on debt. Yes or no? I told you debt and fiscal deficit are two different things. One is the flow which is going to the total stock of the debt. Right? Do you get it? Samjha? So your debt is your swimming pool's water and fiscal deficit is every bucket you pour in that pool. So FRBM said that the number of buckets you can pour in a day is limited. You can pour only 2 buckets. Only 3% you can pour in the pool of debt. Okay? Encasing said that that is all very good. But total pool has also become very big now. So start removing from the total pool now. Okay? So addition is limited and now you have to delete also. Right? So when you reduce your total debt, you reduce your dependency on outside finance. By outside, I mean outside the government. Banks you have borrowed from banks, you have borrowed from other countries and all of that. Okay? So that we ensure intergenerational parity. Yes or no? Is this clear? Write this down. This is encasing. I'll give you a minute to write this down. This is encasing review committee. And one if you need that 1/2 extra mark in every answer, or why I get high marks in GS3, especially in economics, is because I use keywords. I use a lot of words which by reading someone gets impressed. He knows economics. I can easily write government has taken a relaxation of 0.5% in 31st March 1920. Or I can say that government has triggered an escape clause of 0.5%. Which do you think will fetch more marks? Escape clause word has come. Okay, I try to do that. That is my secret, you can say. Okay? So similarly, I'll give you a keyword for this, which is used by encasing committee. So when they say ki reduce this further, they say ki 3 say go to 2.8, go to 2.7, go to 2.5 further. They use the word called as glide path. So try to use this word, glide path. What is the meaning of glide path? You glide down. Glide means sliding, hai na, aisa. So in when we are kids, you know, we use slides in Water Kingdom and water parks also we use slides. That is nothing but glide path. So you have to limit by 3%, and then slowly you have to reduce it. You don't have to reduce it drastically. Small glide path, that is known as a glide path. Now tell me, how does this sentence sound in an answer? Encasing review committee recommended a glide path to achieve the goal of fiscal consolidation. Okay, in one line you conveyed the aim of the committee. Encasing committee recommended a glide path to ensure the goal of fiscal consolidation. Ultimately, the goal is fiscal consolidation. Yes or no? Ultimately, we are doing all this mehnat to achieve fiscal consolidation. Hai na? And when we are able to do it fairly well, when we are able to do it decently well, then we will say that we have achieved the goals of fiscal discipline, fiscal transparency, fiscal, what we say, any good words you can, accountability, any good words you think, fiscal ke aage laga do, simple. But use those words in your answer. That is very important. Don't write English answers, write economic answers. That is what I always say. Okay? But answer writing is now a very far-fetched thing currently. Okay? Did you get this? So true or false? True or false? Chalo, prelims questions, true or false? Encasing review committee the aim of the encasing committee was to set debt as a primary target instead of fiscal deficit. The aim of the committee was to set debt as a primary target, because FRBM already set fiscal deficit as a primary target. So aim of the committee was to set debt. This becomes very important here. This matlab. Okay? This was there already in FRBM. They just revised the targets. They said ki FRBM says less than 3%, we will give you a glide path, reduce it further. And then this is a very old recommendation. Since 2007, different committees have been recommending this, but still we have not operationalized this. Why? There are various reasons. It might create conflict with the government. It might create conflict with RBI. And why do we need a separate authority? Because we already have experts working in the government and RBI, and they always come together and discuss these things. So a separate council is not required. But here the argument from review committee is that a separate council is required to ensure accountability, because there you influence that person. And even if that person says if economically, financially it doesn't make sense, but what government wants to do, it will do. When it will be independent, then it will have true voice. Judiciary is independent, that is why it is having true voice, right? Sometimes it doesn't have true voice, that is a different thing. But on paper at least it has a true voice. Yes or no? Okay. Now coming back to monetization. Monetization was stopped. True or false? Monetization was stopped. Yesterday I did not give you this term because it would have been too much. Today you are comfortable with monetization of deficit. Today you are comfortable with what do we mean by monetization. So I want to give you a fancy term for monetization. Okay? I'll give you a fancy term for monetization. I'll just shift this here, right? I'll write this. I'll give you a fancy term, not for monetized deficit, but for monetization. Sir, bus karo sir. Too complex. This is a fancy term. See, unless you know what is monetization, this term makes no sense. And this term will make sense if you notice the English. Net bank. When we are talking about bank here, we mean RBI here. So net bank credit to government. Credit to government is when whatever bank is crediting to the account of government, be it currency notes or be it by purchase of ad hoc treasury bills, it is just crediting to the government for financing or for monetizing fiscal deficit. Then it says that this is then we call this as net bank credit to government. Yes or no? What is the difference between gross fiscal deficit and net fiscal deficit? What do you think will be the difference between gross fiscal deficit and net fiscal deficit? What do you think? We discussed this yesterday for 2-3 minutes. Try to think. See, you take as much time as you want. We can go slow. but these are the things which should come naturally to you, and they will come when you revise these things. But the thing is ki you have to put in that much effort. Economics is not that it is not like a subject which you read and revise 2-3 times and you will understand. You have to think about it. You have to actually get into the field and actually get into the subject, and then only you will be able to relate to it, right? What do you think is the meaning of net fiscal deficit? What do you think is meant by net fiscal deficit? It is, see, gross fiscal deficit क्या होता है? What is gross fiscal deficit? Is nothing but borrowings of the government. So net fiscal deficit के लिए you reduce the loan which is given by the government to other countries. So gross fiscal deficit minus loans given by India to other countries is net fiscal deficit. Because if you want to have borrowing of 10 lakh crores and you have already given 5 lakh crores to or 6 lakh crores to Bangladesh, then net you only have to borrow 4 lakhs, because Bangladesh you can tell, "Arey, repay that loan to me. I will get 6 from there. I will only borrow 4." So that is net fiscal deficit. Nobody is going to ask you this, but I thought you should know, because I don't like leaving these things automatic. छोटा things, I don't like to leave these things. ठीक है? Now we are talking about debt, yes or no? We are talking about government debt. You know, which was 60%. Government said ki 60% you have to limit. NK Singh Review Committee said ki you have to limit the debt to 60%. Yes or no? Whether it happens or not, that's a different thing altogether. But the target is at 60% debt. Now, what is this debt exactly? What all is counted in this debt? What do you think is counted in this debt? We are talking. Please bear in mind, we are talking about government debt here. We are not talking about private debt. Okay? Do you remember yesterday when we were explaining crowding out, Reliance was also present in the bank, Tata was also present in the bank, you and me were also present in the bank, yes? So, when government has the option to borrow from outside India or within India, we also have the option to borrow from outside India or within India, yes or no? So, our external debt and our internal debt is a separate thing altogether. This is government internal debt and government external debt. Do you agree with this? Right? Okay. Remind me in banking chapter, whenever I teach SLR, to talk to you about government debt, because there we'll look at from banks angle of how banks give debt and of how banks fulfill the obligations or fulfill the borrowing requirements of government. Okay? So now we are talking about government debt. Now this includes two parts. Central government, state government, both same. Huh? This includes, we have combined them. Now this includes two parts. One is okay? Don't write this down. We'll see this in the survey itself. Don't worry about it. So one is public account and other liabilities, debt on public account and other liabilities, and one is your borrowings. Okay? So borrowings, we saw the example. It goes to the bank and it borrows from the bank. It goes outside India. It borrows from other central banks. It borrows from Bank of England, Bank of Japan. It can borrow from some other World Bank or multilateral institution like IMF also. Government can do this. Okay? So this is known as borrowings. Now this can be divided into internal and external. Okay? Right? When you earn salary, so those of you who are earning salary, they might be knowing. So when you get your salary slip, which is your how much salary is credited to your account, uska all calculation is given on a monthly basis. You will notice that some amount is deducted for pension, some amount is deducted for provident fund, PF and all of that. So what happens is when the employer gives you, let's say 100 rupees monthly salary, he will deduct 2 rupees from your salary and he will deposit it with the government and you will get 98 rupees as salary. When you retire, you will get that 2 rupees plus interest to your account. So these are all social security measures, right? We will talk about it in tax lecture more because that is more relevant there. But always realize that when you get salary, there are certain deductions from the salary. You don't get 100 rupees as salary in your bank account. Some amount would be deducted for tax. some amount would be deducted for social security, pension fund, provident fund, all of these are social security measures. So when you get, so employer tells you that your salary is 100 rupees, but actually in the bank only 95 rupees comes. So you see the calculation, why 95 came, why not 100? You see that 3 rupees was deducted as tax for the government beforehand, and 2 rupees was deducted for depositing with the government in your provident fund account. So just like you are having a bank account with Axis Bank, you also have a provident fund account with the government. You also have a pension fund account with the government. Okay? When you change jobs or when you retire, you can ask the government, all these months or all these years, my employer has been deducting my salary from my salary 2 rupees and depositing in your account, or in the account which I have with you. Now pay me back because now I need my money. I have retired. Now pay me back. So government will say, "ठीक है, 10 years tak I received 2 rupees from your employer. From your salary only I received. I had used that money for my purpose." Government said, "I had used that money for my purpose. I have invested that money somewhere. I have earned interest somewhere. So whatever money you from your salary was given to me, I will add some interest to it and I will give you back. It is your money only." So when you earn salary today, it is your money only, but you are not getting all of that today. You are getting some of it. You will get later on. Are you understanding this? Does it make sense? So it is very important to understand this. So this is your employer. This is government. Okay? This is your employer. This is government. And this is you. You are like a kid. Okay? So your employer agrees to pay you 100 rupees as salary. But when you actually receive salary in your bank account, you receive only 95 rupees. अब ये 5 rupees कहाँ गया? What about this 5 rupees? So this 5 rupees, you ask your employer, "Sir, why did you promised me 100 rupees and why did you pay only 95 to my bank account?" He says, while paying 100 rupees, I gave 5 rupees to the government, 3 rupees to the government for tax, and I also gave 2 rupees from your salary only to the government, let's say, as provident fund benefit. What is provident fund and all of that? बाद में, later on. ठीक है? So you understand कि ठीक है, 3 rupees tax I understand because I received income and I have to pay tax on that. Sir, what about this 2 rupees? He explains कि this 2 rupees every month I will deduct from your every 100 rupees, 2 rupees I will deduct and give it to the government. When you retire or when you change jobs or whenever you are in need, you can call the government directly and demand this 2 rupees back. So you ask employer, "Sir, why this arrangement? Why are you doing?" So employer is telling the government is doing this so that you don't spend all of your 100 rupees today. So if this is not, see, forget this is tax, this is gone. If you get all of this 2 rupees today, you might spend, you might not save. Yes or no? You might spend your entire salary, correct? So government is encouraging saving. Government is encouraging because you are earning your first salary, you are newly employed, you want to enjoy life, you want to buy new things, you want to buy phone, you want to eat outside, you want to buy expensive clothes, you want to buy bikes or vehicles, okay? You want to watch movies, right? So there is a possibility that you might spend all the money. So government is calling the employer and telling कि don't let him spend all the money, give some of his money to me, I will give him whenever he requires later on, when he is retired or when he changes job. So every time government pays you salary, 2 rupees gets to the credit of the government. Yes or no? Samjha? When you retire, let's say, because after retirement you need money because your salary stops. So after retirement, let's say you call the government and you say, for every month continuously for so many years, 2 rupees was being deducted from my salary, which is to your credit. Now that 2 rupees has become 2 lakh rupees. Yes or no? Because every month it went. And also you ask the government, so government says, okay, fine, I will give you 2 lakh rupees. You say, no, government, you used all this money for 20 years. Okay? If I would have gotten that money, I might have invested also. You assume that I will spend it, but I might have invested, I might have gotten interest also. If this 2 rupees, if I kept in the bank, I would have gotten interest also. So government says, fine, I will give you 2 lakh plus interest. Enjoy. जी लो अपनी जिंदगी. ठीक है? So this you will get it as, so these are all social security measures. These encourage savings. Even when you don't want to save, savings are automatically ensured. Do you agree? Do you understand this? Right? Now this was from your angle. Coming to the government side. Every year, whatever is the workforce in the country, 2 rupees are coming to the government. Yes or no? Every year or every month. So jitne bhi people are earning in the economy, let's say I am the government. So many people are earning. So many employers are paying salary to their employees. So every month I am getting a lot of money to my credit because deduction हो रहा है. So every month government is getting 2 rupees, right? Let's say there are 100 crore people in the economy who are working, so 2 into 100 crores every month it is getting, right? Now what does government do of this money? Because that money has to be paid by the government after retirement. So you are getting 2 rupees today as a government. Now you are government. You are getting 2 rupees today, but you might have to repay it to that bichara salaried person after a while, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Yes or no? What do? You use that money for your budget. You use that money for investing. You use that money for expenditure. Yes or no? Okay? These all come under public account and other liabilities. For the term for these things, you know what the example which I gave, the term for these things are small savings schemes or small savings. These are known as small savings. Because these are small savings, these are individually salary may say a part of it, these are known as small savings. Okay? You can even open a small savings account with your post office. So go to the post office and say, okay, I want to open a small savings account, which means what? Voluntarily you can submit some rupees or some money to the post office. Post office will give it to the central government and central government will use that money. Okay? So let's say ki you like this scheme. You like ki 2 rupees is going to the government every time. Automatically saving is ensured. You like. You don't trust your own self. I might spend it. Okay? So this happens automatically. You ask the employer, ki, sir, can you deduct 3 rupees instead of 2? Can you deduct 5 rupees from it? Employer says, yes, I can deduct. Okay? Above a certain limit, law does not allow. So then what you think? You think, no, I have to save automatically. So you go to post office and you ask, is there a similar scheme available? Post office says that. I'm giving an example. Even banks run small savings schemes. Post office says that, yes, you can deposit here. So how much do you want to deposit every month? So you say, 5 rupees I will deposit every month from my salary. So 95 you are already getting, and 5 rupees further you are depositing with the post office. 5 rupees is also going to the government. 2 rupees is also going to the government. These are known as small savings schemes or small savings. Okay? But for government, it might seem small, but they are together, they are a huge amount. So they use that money for their budgetary purposes, for their expenditure purposes, for social purposes they use, because they know they have to repay it later on. No? So jisne 20 years, so earlier 20 years earlier who had given money, today you are giving money, so from your money government will repay to that old person, right? See, because every month 100 people are contributing, but every month 100 people are not retiring. So every month, let's say 5 people retire, so government can easily manage the finances. These are known as small savings. Okay? Very important. When you read polity, when you read the parliament chapter, you will come to know that there are 3 funds or 3 accounts which India has. So India, now think from government angle. We have bank account. Yes or no? Your mom, dad are having bank accounts. You might have a bank account of your own also. Your sister has a bank account. Your brother has a bank account. Yes or no? Similarly, government also has 3 different types of accounts, you can say. 3 different types of accounts are mentioned. All of them are for different purposes. So let's say you open your business. Okay, you open your business of selling mangoes. Yes or no? And you want to keep the finances separate. So the money which you get from selling mangoes, you will credit it in a separate bank account. Your own personal finances are of different bank account. Aisa hota hai? Is it common? Yes, it is very common. Separating business accounts and personal accounts is always a wise choice, because you will get complete accounting and complete records. How is my business doing? How am I doing personally? Similarly, government also has separate accounts. So all the receipts and payments, all the inflow and outflow, be it loan, be it capital expense, revenue receipts, anything government does, anything. This is a part of polity, but it is very important to know it here. And since this chapter has not happened in polity, that is why I need to tell it here. Anything, my word is anything which government spends or which government receives are credited to an account, You can say it as a separate bank account, and that account is known as the Consolidated Fund of India. See the words. See, in detail I am not explaining because this becomes a part of polity and I don't want to teach you polity. This is called as Consolidated Fund of India. See, English word Fund of India, समझ में आ गया? Consolidated, everything together, consolidated. Okay? So anything, so all the schemes which government runs, authorization or this thing, debit comes from Consolidated Fund of India. Chalo. Now tell me, little bit we are going into polity for 5 minutes. Now tell me, who owns this money? Who owns this money? This is whose money? This is money majorly of the people, taxes and everything. This is majorly of the people. Who is using this money? Who is managing this money? Government. Is government elected in our country? Yes. We are a democracy. Yes. Okay. Who has control over government? Who has control over government? We have indirect control over government because we can vote them and we can remove them from office. Yes or no? We have indirect control over government. Remove them in the sense we can vote for some other person so that that person is removed. Actively we cannot remove them. Actively removal happens in some countries. Referendum and all of those things happen. India doesn't have those things. India only has election and election someone else so that the first one is removed. Anyways. Okay. So think politically. You are opening a bank account. You are going to get lakhs of rupees as income. Your expenses are also lakhs of rupees. आपसे manage नहीं हो रहा. You cannot manage. So you appoint a person to manage your bank account. You know, it is very real. Do you think that film stars operate their own bank accounts? No, they have separate bank accounts for professional purposes. They hire people for that. They hire assistants or let's say financiers for that, finance experts for that, and they hire their, manage their account. Okay? So government is only managing the account because government is nothing but government is nothing but chosen people from the elected representatives. Yes or no? Do you know the difference between legislature, judiciary and executive? Forget judiciary. See, legislature is the people whom we elect. They are our representatives. Out of them, who forms the government, they decide. Okay? So we have given votes to almost everyone who are there in the legislature. But out of that, only few people are handling the ministries, yes or no? Right? So those are called as executive. So executive works under the control of legislature. You have to remember this. And we elect legislature and legislature appoints executive and executive manages all the affairs of the country. Okay? So I told you in FRRBM. FRRBM was passed as a legislative act to enhance control over the government managing finances. Okay? Similarly, Consolidated Fund of India, if you are giving your assistant, if you are the legislature now. Imagine you are the legislature, you are elected by the people, which means you have the responsibility of everything. And you are appointing some assistant, which is called the government, which is called the executive. You are appointing someone to manage your account. Should you have control over it? Yes. Okay, because it is managing finances. Yes or no? So imagine if it does not have control, government will spend anything anywhere, government will receive anything from anywhere. Okay, because this big fund you are giving to government control. Okay? That is why any expense which is to be done by Consolidated Fund of India, any expense, even 1 rupee expense, if it is to be done from the Consolidated Fund of India, it requires parliamentary approval. So then do you mean that every day hundreds and thousands of approvals are taken? No. That is why we present a budget. So Parliament says कि next 1 year, what expenses are you going to require? Tell me now only. Next 1 year में your dad is asking कि what are you going to do with your pocket money next 1 year के लिए? Tell me now only. I will give you that much pocket money today. ठीक है? So Parliament is asking government before the budget कि next 1 year के लिए what are your expenses? एक रुपये का I want a हिसाब today. कि next 1 year what do you plan to do? When government gives it, there is a discussion separately on it. There is 3 weeks of discussion on it, and then approval is given by the Parliament. This is called as a finance bill. It has the total amount of expenditure, along with which ministry will get how much amount, along with which scheme will get how much amount, along with which purpose will have how much amount of expenditure, and then authority is given, and then government can debit, consolidate or use these funds or this money for the purposes mentioned. If it does not use the money for purposes mentioned, or if it uses the money for some other purposes, then you would have heard of an authority called CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. He gives an adverse certificate कि you were supposed to spend 100 rupees on Jan Dhan Yojana, you did not spend, you spent 100 rupees on some other scheme which was not authorized, and then adverse action is taken. Okay? This was done. This is a Consolidated Fund of India. This is there under Article 266. No need to know now because it will be covered under polity. Okay? Done. Article 266 mentions. So who do you think is the final authorizing power in Consolidated Fund of India? It is the legislature. It is not the executive, it is the legislature. Coming to second. Okay? But what about ekdam small expenses, day-to-day expenses? Ekdam, you want to give retirement benefit to that person. Do you think for that consolidated fund of India is useful. No, this is useful for main schemes and everything. Okay, so we have another account. I told you everything we use here, but out of that, some things we have left out of its purview. We open a separate account for it. We open a separate fund. Okay, we operate a separate account for it, and for that, those are for daily expenses. You know, vada pav, samosa expenses of the government, all those things. That is known as the public. So this means account. A/C means account. Public account of India. Okay, again, don't write all of this, but this is extremely essential. Okay, this is public account of India. This is for chota kharcha, small expenses of the government, right? This is who gave approval for this? Who gave approval for this? Legislature, Parliament, legislature, yes or no? Executive did not, no? This is under the control of executive. Executive says, sir, if I need to buy one stapler tomorrow, do you think I need authorization from you? Do you think entire Parliament will sit and vote on it? No. Then this is under the control of executive. Then we have another fund. I told you we have 3 funds. We have another fund. The expenses or the incomes which cannot be imagined here or here, which happens during natural calamities, national security, yes or no? For example, in pandemic, in budget we would have expected, we had kept a target of 3% of GDP, fiscal deficit, we'll spend. What happened was we required 9%. Okay? Do you think Parliament will again sit and all? Yes, it will, but it will take time. So let us keep an emergency fund. Let us keep a fund for emergency purpose. We all have emergency funds parked somewhere below the pillow, in some utensils, all of that. Okay? That is known as the that is called as the contingency fund of India. See, the English word contingency means you don't know what will happen. This is an emergency fund. Okay, consolidated fund of India, public account of India. And what do you think? Who controls this then? The legislature or the executive? This is also under the control of executive. Why? Because of time constraints. See, when natural calamity or national security issues happen, you don't have the time to get parliamentary approval. So you place this also under the control of executive. Okay, this is actually under the control of president, but actual finance matters are handled by economic affairs secretary, finance secretary. All of those people have the key to this. Okay, the point which I wanted to make is all the small savings which we saw in the last slide, all these small savings which we saw, which is collected by the government. Where do you think it goes? In 1, 2 or 3, where do you think it goes? The small savings which are collected by, so taxes go here because that is the major source of revenue here. Tax, everything goes here. Vada pav expenses, samosa expenses, or some small incomes goes here. And this is the emergency fund. Okay? So this fund, let me tell you a current affairs here. This fund, its size is 500 crore rupees. Okay, very small. After the pandemic, it was felt that we should because 500 crores is not enough. So after the pandemic, just see the figure, just see the magnitude. So it was 500 crore and proposed to be, or it was changed. It was changed after the pandemic. This 500 crores was found to be grossly insufficient. This was used during pandemic. It was changed to, just see the change. Just see the change. It was earlier 500 crores was the fund size. The limit was 500 crores. Then it was changed to 30,000 crores because of pandemic. Okay? And when this falls below 30,000 crores or when this falls below 500 crores, additional funds are taken from first fund. So you need authorization for refilling it, but for spending you don't need authorization. Do you understand? You take money 500 rupees from your mother once, but not for chota kharcha and all. Okay? So when this falls under the specified limit, replenishment happens from the first fund to the third fund. But the daily routine expenses are under the authority of executive only. Now my question is, where does this come? Where does this come? This comes under the second fund, which is under the control of executive. See, naam hi hai, public account of India. It is public's fund. It is not our fund. It is not government's fund. It is public's fund. ठीक है? Now we have taken a loan from World Bank. Where will it come? We have taken a loan from World Bank. Where will it come? Will come. Everything comes here. I told you, only small things come here. Only public, small savings come here. Okay, you only need to know these things. बराबर है? Do you agree? This is the scheme of debt, and now one very interesting thing about so where would this come then? This goes under the public account of India. Where would this go? First account, Consolidated Fund of India. ठीक है? There is an article. Article 292. ठीक है? Article 292. I'll tell you what the article says. The article says कि औकात में रहो. To be very honest, the article says be within limits. FRRBM Act is brought in to operationalize Article 292. Article 292 says that the borrowings cannot be unlimited. There has to be some way in which they have to be limited. So in any other manner prescribed by Parliament. This is the language used, or prescribed by legislature. This is the language used in Article 292. So they are saying that your borrowings should be within a specified limit. Now tell me one thing. When we are government now, when we go to external party or internal party to borrow funds, do you think they will give it to us SAE? They will charge interest. I told you they also charge, or they also want a paper which is signed, so we give them some bonds and all, etc. Okay? So have you taken, so if you have seen movies and all, sometimes loan is taken when you pledge something, when you mortgage something, when you girvi something. Okay? So if you go to a bank, you say, I need money, but I don't have any documents and all. So the bank will say, do you have gold and all? You can pledge that gold here. Then we'll give you money. And if you are not able to repay, we'll sell off that gold. Otherwise, you can repay the money and take away your gold. This is normal, which happens. Girvi rakhna, mortgage. Okay? So similarly, when government borrows these funds, government gives them an implicit, not explicit, implicit assurance that I will repay you from the Consolidated Fund of India. See, borrowings are coming here, repayment of borrowings will go from here. Remember? Article 292 says that the borrowings have to be limited. And then FRRBM Act was brought in 2003 to operationalize Article 292. And then the targets were set, and now Encasing Review Committee has set up the target as 60%. So see how things are evolving. See how they are, what we say, how the priorities change depending on the time. Okay? Now, now pay attention here. Whatever borrowings are done, they go in the Consolidated Fund of India, yes or no? So whatever borrowings which are done in the Consolidated Fund of India, they are called as public debt. Please do not confuse with public account. This is the most important thing I want to teach you here. Most of the students get confused with this, and that is why confusion happens. Whatever borrowings happen, they are known as public debt. So they are debt of the public. We are playing internally only. Na? Government is taking away from salary chore. Government is taking bits and pieces of salary and playing with this. These are small savings. These are other liabilities. This is public account. Forget this for now. The major share is borrowings. What do you think? Out of total debt, this would be a major figure or this would be a major figure? This would be much bigger than this. It is chota, small. Okay? This is your total main borrowing. So this is known as public debt. So government debt includes public debt and public account and other liabilities. Then public debt includes external and internal. And we are still talking about government. Next time we'll talk about privates also. And then that will present a picture of total debt of the country. Okay? Right? Okay? Now let me tell you some interesting things about small savings. They are very easy. Some interesting things to know about small savings. See how small savings operate is. Government wants to encourage savings from people. So normally housewives also, those who do not work, those who do not earn, but husbands give some money for household kharcha and all, right? Groceries, some household allowance housewives get from their husbands. Similarly, children also get. Similarly, people try to save something, some amount they keep in their houses hidden somewhere for emergency. So government wants to encourage these small savings, and government has initiated a lot of schemes to encourage these small savings. So how these small savings work is, central government does not have the capacity to reach each and everyone. But who does? State government. State governments can reach people in their states via various agencies. So how these small saving schemes work is, the central government gives the mandate to state government ki, this is my scheme. I am central government, this is my scheme, but please help me to mobilize the funds. So state governments will run the ads of central government schemes. State governments will advise India Post to run these ads and all. Okay? So these schemes or this fund, what it will do, it will show an ad. Please invest 5 rupees per month. I'm giving an example. Invest 5 rupees per month for 5 years, and after that get 10 rupees per month for next 5 years. Just such small saving schemes would be there, and since they have the backing of the government, they do not fail, right? Because they are trusted source. It is properly, legitimately government-based, government-funded scheme, so they will not fail. So these are mobilized. So on the ground, state government works day night to collect these funds and all. And now these funds are collected with the state government. But who is the owner of these funds? Public. And who is the scheme operationalized, or who is the brain behind this scheme? Central government. Because this scheme is run by central government but operationalized by state government. Do you understand? Central government ka scheme hai, but it is asking state government to go and collect money from him. Simple. So state government is acting as an agent of the central government. Yes or no? State government is acting as an agent of the central government. So now what happens is, state government goes to every house and brings the money from every household, and state government gives the money to central government. Why? Because, sir, it is your scheme, it is your money only, I was just helping you. Do you think state governments will do it for free? No, state governments don't do it for free. So it is operationalized and mobilized by state government, but a scheme is run by central government. So whatever funds or whatever money comes from the state governments, which is collected by the people and given to the central government gives them back to the state government as loans. You collected it, you use, give me interest. Simple. You use the funds, since you have done so much of hard work, give me interest. Loan, not grant. Always remember, I am talking about loan, not grant. Okay? So central government sets a target, 500 crores will collect through small savings. Okay? Now these small savings, I am not talking about this small saving, I am talking about the schemes, because this directly goes with the state government, central government. So state government will mobilize the schemes conducted by central government. State government will take the money and will remit the money to the central government. Sir, it is your money only. But central government gives the money again to the state government. You have done so much of money, use this money, but at an interest. If you want, you can take. If you don't want, I will use it. Simple. Agreed? Operationalized, mobilized by state governments, run by central government, given by state governments to central government, and then again by central government to state government as a loan. This was the interesting fact about. So I'll give you examples about small saving schemes. Post office small saving schemes, like Kisan Vikas Patra scheme is there. Such small saving. Earlier there was a scheme, Indira small saving scheme, which is long discontinued now. So these are the things which come to my mind. So ये जो public account we spoke about ना, public account. Sorry, this public account we spoke about ना, public account. इसके नीचे, under that also there are various heads. So there is a fund. So in public account also there are several funds. So there is a fund called as National Small Savings Fund. National Small Savings Fund. See, the discussion on debt will be more clear when we do monetary policy, because that is also a big part of debt. So debt is something which fiscal policy also pours into, and monetary policy also pours into that part. समझा? इतना समझा? So public account के अंडर एक छोटा सा चीज है National Small Savings Fund. In that the state governments deposit all the money operationalized and mobilized by them, and उससे then again loan goes to the state government at an interest, because it is a loan, so it is an interest. ठीक है? Done. Now coming to this. इसका क्या है? What is the breakup of this now? What is the breakup of this? banks and individuals. Do you remember this? Banks and individuals. Okay? Now we keep the discussion of banks and individuals for monetary policy. We will discuss this in monetary policy, right? This we are going to discuss little bit here and more of it on monetary policy. Now what do you think is external debt? When we talk about external debt, what do you mean by external debt? What do you think is meant by external debt? Which means borrowed from outside India. Okay? कौन कौन होगा? Who will be the fund providers? What do you think? Who will give us funds now? Other countries, which means other countries' banks. Okay? Other countries' individuals might also give. Similarly, like we also subscribe to treasury bills by the government. Similarly, other countries' citizens might also do that. Then multilateral institutions like World Bank and IMF. Multilateral means which operate in a multiple country regime. Multilateral institutions. Like IMF, World Bank. ठीक है? Do you know what is NRI? Non-resident Indians. They are Indians, but they are not staying in India, right? Do you know they can open a bank account in India also? They can open, despite not staying in India, they are Indians, they can open a bank account in India also. So when that bank account is opened in India, those funds, so let's say this is SBI, India. One NRI has opened a bank account with SBI, India. Okay? So this will always be a dollar account. Always remember, this is a dollar account because he is an NRI, he will send dollars, he cannot send rupees. Okay? Now government goes to SBI for loan. Yes or no? Borrowings. So this money is indirectly going here. Yes or no? Okay? So I will write NRI deposits here. Simple. Very straightforward. Right? Coming back to this chart, very important. Coming back to this chart, I told you a similar chart. This borrowings external internal. A similar chart also goes for private persons because Reliance also will borrow from external areas. Reliance will also borrow from internal areas. Reliance will also borrow from banks. Reliance will also borrow from us individuals. Remember, I told you when government issues bonds, they are known as government bonds. When private individuals or private companies issues bonds, they are known as corporate bonds. Yes or no? Right? So similarly, now when we are talking about external debt, now I am not talking about external debt of government alone. I am talking about external debt of government plus private people. Please bear this in mind. This is external debt of government plus private individuals. ठीक है? So now tell me और कहाँ से होगा funds? Where will the funds come from? Other countries might give to the private individual or to the government. Multilateral institutions might give. NRI deposits, like I told you, since they are coming from outside India, they fall under external debt. If resident Indians give their money, then what is it known as? It will be called as an internal borrowing. But since we are talking about external, NRI is giving money. Next, what do you think is coming next? क्या होगा? What do you think? What are the other sources? What do you think? Can Reliance borrow money from Amazon? Yes, it can. Amazon wants to give funds from Amazon UK wants to give funds to Reliance India. It can. Can Reliance India borrow funds from, let's say, Goldman Sachs or Bank of America, which American banks can also lend money to Reliance India. Tata can also go in the world market and borrow money from other banks. Yes or no? Do you agree with this? So what we saw, so it is very easy to conceive that Tata borrowing money from State Bank of India, but Tata can also borrow money from Bank of America. If it is getting lower interest, who is stopping Tata from going outside and borrowing money from Bank of America? When government can do it, why not Tata? Yes or no? Tata can also raise money from outside India. Yes or no? Do you agree with this? Okay. So can I write here loans by loans raised by private companies, not wrong word, loans raised by companies from outside India. Don't write this yet. Are you understanding this? These are the different ways in which people can raise money. People can borrow money. See, you can raise money from other countries' central banks, or you can ask other countries' government to give you money, yes or no. Dubai or Abu Dhabi, Emirates, they all invest in India. They all lend money to India. You can ask institutions like World Bank and IMF to lend you money. See, now you can imagine yourself as a government, as well as you can imagine yourself as Tata or Reliance, because we are talking about total external debt taken together. You can ask NRI deposits. You can ask NRI deposits to invest money in the country. See, this is very simple example. Yes or no? Can Reliance raise money from Bank of America is my question. Yes, it can easily raise money. If it goes to SBI, Just imagine Reliance is going to SBI and it asks for loan. SBI says, sir, rate of interest is 11%. Reliance says, why 11%? SBI says, sir, crowding out, sir. What can we do, sir? Then it asks Bank of America. It calls America. It asks Bank of America. America says, sir, rate of interest we are giving is 9.5%. What will Reliance do? It will borrow from America. Okay? Now, this, do you understand this? This is loans by companies from outside India. Loans raised by companies from outside India. We'll erase this. We'll give a fancy name. We'll give a fancy name to this. And what is the fancy name to this? Let us write in pink. We'll give a fancy name to this. What is the fancy name to this? Is the name understood? It is external. It is a borrowing. Done by whom? Commercial entities, companies, or... So this is called as external commercial borrowings. Okay? So don't write loans by companies from outside India. It sounds very desi. It sounds very crude, very rudimentary. Please write polished language in economics. So you should write external commercial borrowings. We started at 9:40, no? Around. कितने बजे तक खत्म करने बोला था? 11:30 बोला था. I thought 11. Did you understand this? So if I tell, basic question, basic understanding. In your family, there are 4 members: mother, father, you, and your sister. Okay, there are 4 members. Mother has taken loan from HDFC. Father has taken loan from Bank of America. Sister has taken loan from SBI, and you have taken loan from, let's say, Axis Bank. Okay? If I ask you, how much is the debt of your family as a whole? What you will do? You will add everything and you will tell ki total family level pe this is my debt. Yes or no? Similarly, India has a lot of family members: government, state government, third tier government, private corporations, individuals, companies, everything. Okay? Everyone takes loans. You take loan, I take loan, Reliance takes loans, government takes loans. Yes or no? Yes or no? If I ask you what is the total debt of India, would you say it is government debt plus private debt? Yes or no? Total debt of India, is it government debt or private debt, or is it something else? Total debt of India, is it government debt or government debt plus private debt, or is it something else? Who is there in India? There are primarily 2 parties. One is government and one is private people like us. Private people includes individuals also, private people include corporations also. So if I say the total debt of India is 100 crores, which means including government debt plus private debt, yes or no? Do you agree with this? Now, secondly, if I ask you what is the total internal debt of India, total internal debt of India, which means what? You will take government ka internal debt plus you will take private ka internal debt and you will add a total. Yes or no? Third question, if I ask you total external debt of India, what will you take? You will take all these because this is nothing but taken by the government plus private, which is resulting into total external debt. Yes or no? Okay. If I ask you what is the total government debt of India, then what you will do? You will take government ka internal plus government's external. Yes or no? If I ask you what is total private debt of India, what will you take? You will take private's external plus private's internal. Yes or no? If I ask you what is private internal debt of India, you will take only one amount, private internal debt, whatever privates have borrowed within India. Yes or no? Do you agree? We are talking here about total external debt of India, which is nothing but all these things. Here we were speaking about total government debt. Here we were speaking about total government debt, which is nothing but your internal plus external, everything taken together. Here we are talking about total external debt of India, which is all of these things. Now my question to you is, out of these components, which would be highest amount? What do you think? Out of these 1, 2, 3, 4 things, what do you think would be of a highest amount? So let's say total external debt is 1000 crore rupees, comprised of all of these. Total hai iska. What do you think is the highest amount? Is it government borrowing from other countries, or is it private people borrowing from other countries, other governments? So I would say here countries के बदले I should write here, ठीक है, countries भी ठीक है. Countries में banks and government both आ गया. Other country का bank and other country का government. Countries. One clarification. When I say other countries, it normally means other countries, central banks and governments. Other countries, Reserve Bank जैसा अपना है. Other countries, central banks and government, because other countries' banks are covered here when commercial borrowings happen. So anyways, what do you think? 1, 2, 3, 4. Try to take a guess. Try to think. क्या सबसे ज़्यादा होगा? Which component would be highest in the external debt paradigm? 1, 2, 3 or 4. There are 4 components which I have mentioned. 1, 2, 3 or 4. Which countries? Which component would be the highest? This is the highest out of all. See, government doesn't borrow a lot from outside India. Government does not borrow a lot from outside India. Implication of this statement, government borrows a lot from within India. Implication of that statement, government crowds out the private borrowing in India. Implication of that statement, privates go outside India. Samjha? Because government is restricting of private people within India, private people go outside India. Okay? Did you understand? Government does not borrow a lot from outside India. I will tell you why. There is a risk associated with this. I will tell you why. Acha, don't you think this entire, all these components are in dollars or let's say foreign currency? Yes or no? This is not in rupees, this is in dollars. Okay? So, government borrows a lot from within India, which results in crowding out of private investment within India or private borrowing within India, which sometimes forces private corporations to go or companies to go outside India. That is why external commercial borrowings is the highest component of all the things. Remember, we are talking about external debt. We are not talking about internal debt. We are talking about external debt. Usme se commercial borrowings, external commercial borrowings are the highest component. Right? Now, for 1 second, think from lender's point of view. You are in Bank of America. Okay? Government of India is asking you for a loan, and let's say Tata Motors is asking you for a loan. So they have both come to, yesterday like we saw in India Bank, so many people were coming. Similarly, now in Bank of America, many people are coming. There are 2 customers sitting. One is Government of India or any state rather, and next is Tata Motors. So what will you ask? What will you check? How well will they be able to repay the loan and all, right? So you ask the government what assurance you have that you will repay. You will ask Tata Motors how will you be able to repay the loan? So you notice that the accounts, or you notice that the financial health of government is already very bad. Yes or no? Because we are a mixed economy, we have social obligations. So economically speaking, our financial health is very bad. Yes or no? So Tata will appear very bright and very better compared to government of India financially. So then more and more of external banks would be willing to give loans to commercial entities rather than government entities. Are you getting it? Because Tata is a private sector. So Tata will have sound finances, Tata will have good financial management practices, whereas Tata does not have a lot of social obligations also. It spends on social obligations, no doubt, but Tata is primarily a profit making entity. So banks also want to give loans to profit making entity, because if Tata makes profit, bank will get its loan back. Yes or no? Government se aayega nahi aayega, we don't know. The guarantee is given by government to people within India, na, because it is sovereign in India. Outside India, government is not sovereign, and government will be able to repay that also. Government is not going to default it. But thinking from a commercial angle, Tata will be able to much more utilize the money in a better manner than government. That is why external commercial borrowings are comparatively cheaper for a lot of Indian corporates compared to internal borrowings. So like I gave the example, SBI is quoting 11% rate of interest, but Bank of America will quote 9.5%, because SBI is already crowded out due to government borrowings. Okay? Did you understand this? Now the question arises ki why government does not prefer to go outside India, but why the government wants to stay in India. Like I told you, government does not borrow outside India a lot. Government borrows from India, and then from India it crowds out other private people, and then private people go outside India. Okay, this is the circle which happens, and they also get favorable terms outside India. So ऐसा नहीं कि just because of government they are running out, right? Now why is government not borrowing externally a lot? This is the question. Ki why does government not borrow a lot externally? That is the question. That is a $1 million question which we need to ask ourselves. Ki why is government not borrowing externally, or not borrowing a lot of money externally? That is the question which we need to ask. What do you think is the answer? See, given an option, the government always prefers to borrow within India. Why is that? Only in extreme cases, only when you need a lot of money, only when there is already a lot of crowding out happening, then the government will go outside India. Ki theek hai, I should not affect a lot of C plus I in India, then I will go. But why do you think is government not willing to borrow externally? क्यों है ऐसा? The answer is very simple, and the answer to this question we will see in the next episode. We will continue this. We'll continue the same thing. We are at external debt. We will continue external debt in the next lecture. We'll revise a lot of things in the next lecture. So don't worry. Even if you have slightly not understood debt, we'll be able to understand it in the next lecture as and when we revise. Right? So we'll meet in the next lecture. We'll start with taxation chapter in the next lecture. So please stay tuned and keep on revising and keep on reading newspapers. If you come across any terms which you don't understand in the newspaper, ask me promptly. I will explain it. Or if it is coming in the future lectures, I will tell you it will come in the future lectures. Don't worry about it. Okay? So I hope you understood all about debt. This lecture was mainly about debt. This lecture was mainly about fiscal deficit and its relation to debt, and why management of debt is important. We are yet to conclude debt, because half of debt will be covered in monetary policy, and then it covers the debt dynamics. Okay? Thank you very much. We'll see. I'll see you in the next lecture.